On.
Hello. Welcome to the platform's first roundtable. Today we're talking XGovs and retroactive public. Wait, how do I say it? I'm getting my RPG and my NRPG and my RGFP confused because I'm a DGen. Retroactive Public Goods Funding Program, RGFP. And I've got Teddy here, my faithful co-host. Friend of the show, sponsor of the platform, and just an overall great guy, Fisherman. Thanks for coming and being here. And then we also have D13, which I'm excited to pick your brain. Welcome.
Thank you very much. First time as well. Long overdue.
Fingers crossed, nothing goes wrong because this is live. But I'm excited. I really am. And LoafPickle will be joining us shortly. He got held up in the Fiat mines today, but Teddy's going to keep an eye on backstage so I can bring him in when he gets here. And I think a really great place to start, just if anybody's unfamiliar with who all of us are, that might be a good place to start. So I'm IRL. I produce live streams and content for the ecosystem with a lot of my friends through a group lift. We're calling it The Platform. It's a YouTube channel. We get lots of help. Tons of people help out. Tons of people contribute to the show every week. It's just a really good time. I'm also kind of a hardcore DGen. I own more than 1,000 NFTs. I have no idea how many meme coins. And I admit I'm like the last person to check charts. Like they just stress me out. Teddy, thanks for being my co-host, bud. Give yourself a quick intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Ted.algo. I've been in the ecosystem for a really long amount of time, kind of looking at things a little bit differently. I really get into it via the ETH Denver conference, being based here. It's been a really great opportunity for me to meet in person a lot of different people. And everyone from Cooper Daniels to, I don't know, Joanna from the foundation, and in between. It's been really awesome for me to go and meet these people, contributors, active people in the space. And as a result, I feel like I have this unique opportunity to at least talk about it to some extent. For me, I kind of am just a typical guy. I do work with Mingo, MNGO, to help out with their Popcorn Lounge, which is a sports betting kind of or community betting kind of software. And that's just kind of the high level for me. I'm a big supporter of NFD, and shout out Fisherman, little John. And
We love Fisherman. And you're co-host of Algo Hour, the, longest running weekly live stream on Algorand, don't you know? And you do our sports stuff section every week, which I love too. So I appreciate you. Fisherman, you're my BFF, bud. Tell everyone else who you are, though. We all love you big time.
Yeah, I'm a community member first and foremost. And after that, I suppose I am a co-founder of Transaction Lab, which we are the people that created NF domains. So the .algo that you see around, if you're not familiar, I'm sure you are if you watch the show. And yeah, I'm just generally interested in cool tech shit, kind of. And Algorand kind of, is cool tech shit. So that's kind of.
Well, and you guys have been huge supporters from the beginning of me personally, just and cheerleaders and supporters, and being like, just do you, whatever you can do it.
Yeah, so we're very big supporters for sure of any positive kind of Algorand news or marketing, because there's definitely a lack of just really great people talking about Algorand, and we just wanted to support that. And so you guys, the Next Block, and Frugal BC, we think you guys are fantastic news sources. Not that Coop is not a fantastic news source. We love Coop too.
Right.
We want to support everyone. But yeah,
for sure. Well, I appreciate it because I reached out and said, hey, I want to host my first roundtable. I haven't done it yet. You want to do it? And you were like, not only were you like, heck yeah, you were like, I know exactly what I want to talk about. And it was this RGFP. So let's quick get an intro from D13. Tell us a little bit about yourself if you don't mind. I know you've been involved in so many projects. that like when I was doing the credits reel, I felt like it just went on and on and on. Like it was so many ads.
I brought some slides. I'm
Okay,
D13.
let me move you over real quick.
Look at this bullshit.
I'm not even on screen.
Yeah, I can see it. You're good.
I personify attention deficit-driven development. So various random algorithm things, like small tools like consensus.algorand observer or flow algo surf. I've developed some smart contracts for Excel market, and I still do. I started the Coop CRV way back in the day. Feels like about 3 crypto years, and I developed the Coop.hair site. A bunch of voice stuff as well, and some recent white hat disclosures and attacks. So a little bit of a lot of things.
You are kind of an authority in the space, in my opinion. Like, I wouldn't want to be anybody who doesn't like is not on the legit side of things, because like D13 is going to find out. He's going to tell everybody. You better watch out. But yeah, you're a huge. You and Fisherman are just such big advocates for the space and are really great resources for people, and are just very approachable, which I appreciate. As a non-technical user, can be a little intimidating. And I loved your slide. That was stellar. Attention deficit driven development.
It's brilliant.
I like it. It's solid. Well, thanks for joining us. Fisherman, why don't you, I have this linked up here. If you haven't checked it out, we'll drop it. Maybe if Ted can find it, we'll get him to put it in the comments. We'll try. This Medium article, you've written a few other pieces in Medium about the concept of retroactive grant funding, which I just am like totally nerding out over, mainly because admittingly, we have seen some pain and some friction in the grant process on Algorand specifically. And this just seemed like it's easy to complain. It's way harder to like try to be part of the solution. And you have been really spinning your wheels and like brainstorming and collaborating with people. And this is kind of the most recent update you've given us kind of on a potential solution, right?
Yeah. So, I'll first start just like high level. Governance and funding are like two of the most difficult problems possibly like in, society, never mind just like crypto, so when you start talking about like these distributed networks and how they're governed and how people get funding and access to funding, it's quite complicated. And like I don't kind of like I didn't picture myself ever being in the role of thinking about these things, but it's like crucially important for the future of the network that we get funding right. So funding, when I say funding, I just mean access to funds. So those come in many forms. Like they could come in VC, venture capitalists investing in your project, taking equity in tokens. And then there's grant funding, which is kind of like, blockchain companies or, layer ones or however you want to think about it will mint a token, and they'll use the token to give out grants to developers or to whoever that needs money. How that actually happens and how you can do it efficiently and effectively is really, really difficult. And that's kind of what I'm getting into like with this piece, and why I think we should move to retroactive public goods funding compared to proactive public goods funding. And so first I'll just start with what we have done. So proactive funding is essentially when somebody comes and says, hey, I want to build X, I need Y to do that. And there's some board or body or entity or something that decides, is this worth spending on? And then how much should we give them? So this is a really big kind of issue because you don't know the future, right? Like nobody knows the future. So if there's 3 proposals and they're all pretty similar, how do you determine which one like gets it, right? Or if somebody speculates and says, hey, I want to build this new product, how do you know that that product is going to have any sort of impact? Like, we've seen this a lot where, massive grants are given to projects, and then the projects essentially die in like 1 to 2 years when they run out of their grant money. And it's because there was never any product market fit for their product, or there just aren't enough users. One of the two problems, like one or the other, typically.
So either the market's not big enough to sustain the limited competitors that exist, or it's a rug, right?
Not
And I'm not
necessarily.
saying like on purpose, right? Like I'm not saying like a malicious intent rug. Like good things or bad things happen to good people, right? But like some of the funding we have seen, and I'm thinking, the larger amounts, the people that were here when they were getting them and then are suddenly,
Just take the top 3, for
Kinda
example, right?
gone.
Like
Right.
the top 3 grant recipients from Algorand were Reach, Rand Labs, and Folks Finance. None of them are around anymore, right? So
Right.
all 3 of those kind of had their own issues. Like, so Folks, it was
Fol-
like legals. They just wanted out. And
Folks
then,
is around though still,
Trying
right?
to say
You-
AlgoFi?
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah, Folks is
Yeah,
around.
I didn't
I
want
was
to
I
start
thought
on a
maybe they
combative
sunsetted
note,
something.
but
Redact.
I was
Just to
about to be like,
clarify,
wait a second here.
Folks Finance, alive and
We
well.
like folks.
So
Right.
sorry,
Yes.
folks.
It's okay.
Yes, yeah. Misspoke there. I'm so sorry.
AlgoFi, that I'm following along now. I was like really searching for like maybe something that they had launched just like one service and then pulled back, kind of like we're seeing with some other people. So anyways, yes, no. Okay. AlgoFi.
Yeah, and then I'm sorry. I should use a better example maybe, but like just for instance, I keep using this example and I feel really bad, but I think it's just like a good example. So there was a proposal that was put forth for a Cardano to Algorand bridge for NFTs.
Okay.
And in my head, that provides just about zero value and zero impact, right? But the proposal was for like 350K algo or something like that. It was quite a good amount of algo, but it's one of those things that it shouldn't be judged proactively. It should be judged retroactively. Like, so why try and put a value on an NFT bridge to Cardano before it's actually launched? Because
Right.
it's almost impossible to judge if anybody will use it. I don't think anybody would use it, but I'd be the first to admit that I'm wrong if there's millions of dollars flowing through this bridge in NFTs and we subsume the Cardano ecosystem, but I just don't think that would really happen. Yeah.
Right.
So
Well, we saw grants for other things too. I was really excited about, it's on the tip of my tongue. I got an AlgoBot that was, one of their collabs. They were doing the NFT search, word search thing. I get names on the tip of my tongue because I feel like there's been so many. But yeah, so people promise to build stuff and either it's harder than they think it's going to be, the people aren't there, something happens and it doesn't stick, right? And then we've spent money. We basically chased good money after bad, essentially, especially when you're talking usage. But the concept of doing it retroactively is like, it piques my interest. I'm not gonna lie, I am really excited about this.
So the moral of it is like, it is easier to assess something that happened in the past than it is to like guess what will happen in the future. And like that just rings really true to me. It's like, if you try and predict the future, you're going to be wrong so much. But if you're trying to assess what happened in the past, you have like metrics and stuff at your disposal, and you can compare it to other things that happened in the past. Like that, all of a sudden, is a lot easier for you to judge accurately.
And I would argue it's
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So another issue with proactive funding, which personally I believe some of it actually might be required, but
Right.
another issue is how you define milestones. It's going to be extremely rare and hard to actually define milestones in a way that will basically predict that there's going to be impact. Because if you have milestones A, B, and C, it isn't every team that will be 100% aligned to seeing the project succeed. So some people that we might label grant farmers may be aligned to fulfill A, B, and C in the minimum viable way possible, just to tick the
Right.
boxes. Then you'll be viable to get the grant, and then there's a lot of auxiliary work, let's say, that goes into launching something. It isn't just throwing the code
Prismatic.
together and putting it on a sorry, what?
You said prismatic was
No,
was the one
I'm sorry. I thought we were discussing things that launched.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's fair.
Right. So let's assume that something put together D13.com and put it on mainnet, and then what is that? It? Are user support supposed to like find you, come grow virally and so on? There's all sorts of stuff that you need to do in order to like grow the protocol, marketing, advertising, partnerships, all sorts of stuff that is really hard to codify in a proposal based on some milestones, unless you go the full way and you're going to be paid out based on like some metrics that again going to be pretty hard to make them hard to fake.
I was going to say, but then when you introduce metrics, you get into gamification of those metrics, and then I feel like with every milestone and the individual attention that would require to make it effective, it adds that additional layer of friction for those grant recipients, right? So yeah, I agree. There's definitely challenges. I have heard the feedback that like larger infrastructure might require like more proactive funding, but then like maybe that's what VCs or some type of like sponsorship funding might be for, or like crowdsourcing funding maybe.
Yeah. That was going to be my initial disagreement, is that I don't know that retroactive funding is meant to cover everything, because if you're meant to bootstrap like an entirely new DeFi protocol, for example, then I don't know that it's reasonable to pay out of pocket and then cross your fingers that you will actually have the impact that will convince the retroactive grants committee that you deserve ongoing funding, basically. So, but I don't think that that's what we're discussing, though, to move everything into retroactive.
Yeah, so there's been an evolution of the idea, essentially. I proposed something that was quite radical in saying, let's only do retroactive funding, because retroactive funding is we can be a lot more accurate with our funding if we do it retroactively compared to proactively. So this was my first take on it, and I still kind of think that if we did this, it would be far better than currently doing these proactive grants. But I've been convinced that there is a need for some proactive grants in the space, just through the sheer number of people that commented the exact same thing. So I took that feedback, and Kappa, Jacopo, I don't know his full name, but he goes by Kappa on Discord, gave me a great idea of why don't we do like a crowdfunding sort of DAO for the proactive grants? And I think it's actually quite brilliant how it could work. So like a proactive DAO essentially could accept proposals from, projects or whatever. And then the Algorand Foundation gives the proactive DAO, it could be the same amount as XGov, 2 million algo each quarter. But then the members of the proactive DAO would need to lock up 5K algo, just pulling a number. None of this is like, set in stone. They have to, lock up into the DAO 5K algo per quarter of their own algo, and they have to deploy 50% of that minimum. So this is like a really detailed thing, but I'm just kind of skipping a lot of the details to give you like the high level. But the proactive DAO would essentially be responsible for like accepting these proposals and then paying out those projects based on the milestones that they complete. Now, once that project goes to mainnet, the impact DAO, the retroactive DAO, could judge, this project they launched, they're making quite a big impact. Let's give them some retroactive public goods funding. So the retroactive public goods funding DAO could pay this project, but instead of that algo going to the project, it could first go to pay back the proactive DAO that paid for them to even get to mainnet. You know, so it's kind of like a proactive DAO working with a retroactive DAO, but the majority of the money is stuck in the retroactive DAO and only rewards impact based, like on mainnet. So if a project comes into the proactive DAO and doesn't, you know, reach its milestones, doesn't launch on mainnet, whatever, then the only money that is being lost is from the proactive DAO, which would be a smaller amount of money. And some of that money would be like individual contributors compared to just 100% Algorand Foundation funds. So why I think it's
love
kind
that.
of beautiful is because like these people, part of the proactive DAO, are essentially like investors, right? And so they are like very like focused in on, will this project make an impact and make like, you know, is it worth funding? And these people are more qualified to answer that than just your typical XGov who has no skin in the game, who doesn't actually care, right?
They
Like,
have to vote.
They just
You
have to vote.
vote.
And like, you're not really, you're not putting your money behind it. You know what I mean? So there's nothing to lose from your perspective. It's just, you know, I'm voting for X thing because I want to see it. You know, I just want to see it live on mainnet. It's not like yeah. And then if you think about it from the proposer's perspective, the proposer actually needs to now care if their project is going to make an impact. Because if it doesn't make an impact, then they won't get retroactive public goods funding. So that's actually kind of like a key thing here to this whole plan too, is right now you can just propose anything into XGov. And if it gets funded, then people will build it. But if it doesn't get funded, then they don't build it. Now, to me, that is like a completely backwards mindset. You should want to build something because there is a demand for it. You know, so it shouldn't be like, if I get money for it, then I'll build it. It should be, I'm going to build it and then I will get money for it. That's like the proper mindset to be in. And retroactive public goods funding, which only funds based on impact on mainnet, like that's the way to do it, in my opinion. It just aligns perfectly like the impact and profit. So where, you know, if you make impact, you make profit. You know, that's a very strong incentive for an entrepreneur or like, you know, a builder. So yeah.
Also, it seems like a corrective measure, like a valuable way to kind of course correct from maybe some earlier missteps with grant money. Like, you know, it might be, like you said, maybe not go all the way, but to me, even like proactive DAO being like crowdsourcing and stuff, there's some really cool stuff you can do with smart contracts where if it doesn't get funded, it can get sent back. Lofty uses something very similar when they fund their properties. And to me, that gives potential VCs or other maybe smaller investors the opportunity to act kind of with their own sovereignty, if you will, outside of, you know, the foundation's giving them the avenue to act a little sovereign with their investments inside of the ecosystem, which I think is really exciting. I'm sorry, Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple questions here. One, I think I maybe see LoafPickle in the waiting room. Maybe.
Ooh.
I'm not sure. It says unknown user.
Loaf, you can talk to us while you're backstage, just to test it. Yeah.
But the other thing that I wanted to ask Fisherman was, what do you say about the criticism that like the quality of developer that you have access to would go down because the promise of payment isn't upfront, but it's down the line?
I wouldn't say that there really is a valid criticism on that. Like,
okay.
It's essentially like saying, if you don't give me free money, I'm not trying to, you know, party with you. And like, that's like, to me, is just like kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? It's like, you should be here because you want to be here, not because you're being like extrinsically rewarded by, you know, like the foundation. You know, because that is the grant farmer mindset. It is, you pay me or I don't care about your chain. It's like, we probably don't want those people.
Well, and I think there is something to be said when it's a new chain, right? And you're trying to get developers to like play around on the chain and to like try building stuff. But I think we're beyond that point, right? Like people know.
The easiest way to get somebody interested in you is to pay them, right? It's just to say, here's money. Now come.
Man, you are you talking about what I have to deal with every weekend? No, in all seriousness, though, I guess the point that I was trying to make here was trying to compare this to some extent to Web 2. And again, it's not apples to apples. But the way I kind of like to look at this to some extent is that we're dealing with a bunch of startups. And naturally, 90 to 90 whatever percent, some ridiculously high percentage of startups fail. And of course, as we've all kind of found out, if you just give money to 100 startups, hoping that you're going to get one moonshot, well, you might get one moonshot, but you're more likely than not, you're going to get 95, farts. And
totally true. Yep.
I think the question that I have is trying to differentiate or find somewhere in the middle on that, right? Where you can still reward people for the work that they're doing today, even if it may not necessarily have an immediate community impact, while simultaneously not wasting away all of these funds for the people that actually do show up for the community. And, you say, okay, like, shit, you've been like John, like you and NFT have been around for however many years, right? Like it would be cool to go and say, okay, how much money would it cost to make or to reward you for that work that you've put in, right? Where you could have gone through and said, okay, we could take this technology to a Flux or to some other L1 or something like that, right? And this is where, you could call me out on maybe certain L1s not having technical capabilities that you need. But the point being, right, you could go and be somewhere else, right? And to be frank with you, that probably would have been a much better economic decision, not just from a grant farming perspective, but from a business perspective.
Totally. Yeah. You make like a lot of really good points, I don't know really which one to go off.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a rant. I think my specific question for you then is, how would you compare this to startups then in how the foundation has gone through, where they kind of went through almost like more of like a Y Combinator of like, all right, we're going to give all of the projects money, and then whichever one succeeds, we'll invest in further with Algorand Ventures, or hopefully they'll just provide all of the money.
Yeah, I'll first start with Algorand as a startup, right? So like this is a startup funding startups, so you don't get any riskier than what we're doing with funding here. Like,
Fair.
And maybe that's part of the reason why you see like a 99% waste rate, where it's like if you go through the grant list and you say how many of these are actually on mainnet right now doing anything, it's an extremely small fraction. And so, yeah, it's like we're trying to, throw a dart at a dartboard that's moving like 250 miles per hour. So proactive funding in this environment is always going to have that fail rate, in my opinion. And that's why the smartest thing to do is pretty much not use any Algorand funds towards proactive funding. And that's why I'm kind of a fan of keeping like proactive funding getting an extremely small amount of algo. Something like 2 million algo per quarter seems fair to me if we're going to give 10 to 15 million retroactively per quarter. And then also reduce the risk by allowing individuals to put their money up. So if it was individual money, users' money plus the Algorand Foundation taking this proactive risk, then it diminishes the risk of just Algo Foundation treasury funds, because we could fund more proactively but use partially somebody else's money. So now maybe we're only spending 50%, or something. Or I would actually like it to be much lower than that. Like Algo Foundation should not be spending much at all on proactive funding for this reason. And that's why if we just moved all that kind of money to the retroactive public goods, I'm calling it Impact DAO for now, is I think that would go so much further, because then you are rewarding people that are actually making like an impact on chain, and you're not just speculating on future outcomes, which that's like not the Algo Foundation's job. Really, they're not designed for it. They're not set up for it. Ventures, ventures is a much better entity to do that kind of stuff because they can do like their due diligence and whatever, you know. But yeah.
I feel like, and this might be obvious, and there's another point I want to jump back to on iterative development, but just off face value, to me, there's a difference in vibes between proactive and retroactive, right?
Definitely.
And to me, I cannot imagine why you would not want to harness the vibes that come along with giving somebody that's contributing to your community a pat on the back and saying, do more, like, you got this, I believe it. For me, the missteps that went on early on in the grants, pre-ventures program, they trashed the vibes. I'm not gonna lie. And now we have XGov, and it's come a long way. I will admit that. I personally am still not participating in it because I don't feel the change is fast enough. I just am frustrated. I'm watching it. I'm paying attention to it. I'm just not there yet personally. So I think, as far as vibes, face value go, that's huge. Like,
I'm going to cut in here.
D13,
it looked like you had a question or hand up or something.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my take on this is that I actually think builder quality would go up. So the current XGov program and generally proactive funding, as well as fundraising in general, is actually a test of how well you can sell, right? That's a necessary skill for like a builder team, but that's usually, if not perpendicular, it's sometimes contradictory to like actual development work. So you need to optimize for selling, writing a proposal, maybe a pitch deck, then marketing, answering community questions. All of that stuff is something that a large section of developers and builders hate doing so much that personally I have at least 4 projects that I could request, even retroactive stuff, from both XGov and the VOI testnet council. And I still haven't bothered to actually put it together and put it through, because that's not really what I like to do. So
And that's funny because you're the most deserving, right? It's the most deserving people who don't request money.
So
because
I
that's
am
just
not
how-
here to be flattered.
Well, that's what I'm doing.
All right. So this is the changing it to retroactive would, in my opinion, it might actually decrease the volume of builders or projects because of the bootstrapping problem that I'll get to in a second. But like developer types that like to try things out and just develop stuff, like actual focus on the building. And that can include the community aspect, but the selling and the like proposal writing and the decks is a different skill altogether. But another somewhat criticism I had is basically if you make a proactive DAO and you give it a small budget, basically I think you mentioned the equivalent of the budget that XGov has right now. You're basically shutting out bootstrapping anything significant, or maybe you're limiting it to maybe one significant thing a quarter if it got more than like 80% of the budget. So developing anything significant, and by significant I'm talking like, let's say an NFT marketplace that has some innovative aspects like lending. It's not copy paste of everything else, or a DeFi protocol that again tries to innovate with something. Less than 400,000 USD will probably not get you further than 18 months. If you account for 2 or 3 salaries, infrastructure, audits, deployment, and then some for marketing as well. That's basically the budget that you mentioned for a proactive DAO would be probably good enough to bootstrap a few smaller medium projects that in most cases, at least in our privileged like first world take, would probably not even be needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And it's not that I don't want to see a big project get funding. It's that I don't think we have the money to take the risk to fund these big projects. Like truly, it's kind of its own problem that we don't have a thriving VC community on Algorand right now. And that kind of part of like our lore or our history is like we started as a VC chain and now there are no VCs left. That's fun. And that's kind of its own problem though. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like if the ecosystem was actually thriving, then
Yeah.
VCs would all of a sudden be interested in funding these things. But yeah, just big picture, I'll say we don't have the money, and that is a VC's job, right? Like if there is a DeFi platform that wants to launch and, they're going to make a ton of money, in quotes, whatever, they're proactive, their proposal, their pitch decks look great, they convince a bunch of VCs, they're going to give them tokens, whatever, then maybe a VC will take the risk on them, but it's kind of like a chicken and an egg problem now. It's like, well, since our ecosystem is not that big and thriving, no VCs are interested. Well, how do you get VCs interested? You got to make the ecosystem thrive, right? And so how we could do that is by just focusing on impact right now and rewarding the impactful projects that are already here, already built, already on mainnet, compared to just like, okay, let's just keep spraying money at random shit and, pray that one of them is our dupe and, we all get a, 100K airdrop or something. But yeah.
Do you think this is part, and I kind of know the answer to this question, but this is a momentum problem where you're trying to convince these VCs to invest into the ecosystem, which in theory would create momentum because then, you have products being developed and then there's attention being driven. And then once there's products actually used, I mean, for instance, today, and this is going to sound extremely cynical to me for some extent, but hearing the foundation's one of their Twitter spaces where she was trying to articulate the differences between holding your algo in Coinbase versus holding your algo in Para. And she was saying you could do all of these awesome things and whatnot. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that, I think there's a comprehensive DeFi component to Algorand. I feel like, there needs to be what's the killer app? What's the killer thing that gets people excited? Not just from a user perspective, but from a developer perspective, where they say, oh man, if that guy can do that, there's no freaking reason why I can't build my own product, right? Or something like that. And do you think that Algorand is in a place today for them to go and are they well established enough to implement retroactive grants, or do they still need to have some sort of basic open source foundational tools that can help kind of carry these developers along, right? Because I think to some extent, if you were to purely do retroactive for the entirety of the existence of the blockchain, then you run into that momentum problem. Now, I agree with you, right? Like we don't have enough money to just keep doing proactive grants. And while it's awesome to be able to go and give people a financial incentive to care about you, as you've articulated earlier, that's not really that healthy. And it's not really, that's how you get grant farmers.
So I would just start with, okay, it's like a users and a price ratio. It's like the users follow price generally. Like that's how they first get interested in something, but the users are what make the ecosystem thrive, right? So if you look at Solana right now, it's not due to Solana being $130 that it's thriving, although that helps. It's the tens of thousands of actual degen users, right, on there, putting through 1 billion volume a day on dexes, right? While we have 1.5 million volume on our dexes. And, you can go try it yourself. Solana is not better than Algorand. From a UX perspective or from a technological perspective, I much prefer Algorand where my transactions don't fail. And, we honestly have better UX. Go try Jupiter and then go try Vestige. In my opinion, Vestige is better. And Jupiter is valued at, some crazy amount of money. So really it's this issue of how do we get users? That's my big question. I don't know the answer to that. I think rewarding the builders that are here is kind of a necessity. I don't necessarily think it leads to tons of users, if that makes sense. Users are kind of you got to attract them their own way, and mainly right now users are attracted through speculation and stuff like that. And I think, Solana was just they did a really good job honing in on the degen speculation kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And so a lot of Ethereum users who are like, on-chain degenning are now moving over to Solana. And there's no reason why we can be that place to go. Yeah. I mean, this is like a more general topic talking about
Right.
momentum and how we get users and stuff like that. I don't know the answers to these questions, to be honest.
Roundtable adoption coming soon to a
Yeah.
stream near you. I want to check it in with the chat, but I also wanted to circle back around on the larger projects and financing those. I might be inclined to think that might incentivize the iterative development, meaning do one thing, give us your MVP, and then get better, and then get better, and then get better. And then with the retroactive grants, the way that's set up, you can be rewarded for that building as you go. You build a house kind of one wall at a time. To me, that seems like an attractive way to get some grassroots vibes going. So I don't want to get too stuck on circling back to the vibes, but it is a big part of blockchain, I think. So just real quick, it looks like we've got a couple of comments. Everyday Algonaut says, if the goal is to best redistribute the rest of the algos, it should be invested into something that generates yield.
But that's not the goal.
That's not the point of grants, right?
The goal of the Algorand Foundation is to grow the ecosystem, right? It is not to preserve capital, or it's not to make money. It's to grow the ecosystem. So with that mindset, it's like, okay, how do we grow the ecosystem? Well, it's probably good to pay the people that are in the ecosystem and, putting my favorite word, impact, right? Making impact on the chain. It makes the most sense to give them some of it because they're the ones in the ecosystem all day interacting with the users and stuff.
I don't know if Soodle is messing with you, but he says they prefer Jupiter over Vestige. I need to know why. That's demand fair. Proof. But let me ask you this. So I have read, and you have done a lot of work on this. This is a long, detailed article, and there's been updates kind of like you were talking about adding or making space for proactive with the retroactive funding. But kind of thinking about the possibilities, because I know you've been talking to lots of people. Just be honest with me. What's the path to getting this implemented? And is there one? Because I want to believe that we could own the day and control our own destiny and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm a little skeptical that we could get adequate support from the foundation on this. And to be fair, just as a quick disclosure, they were invited to it. We're going to try to put together a second roundtable where they are able to make it and stuff. But they were invited today and just were not able to make it. But just give me kind of your general impression, Fish, because I know you've been talking to lots of people.
Yeah, no, generally speaking, I don't see really any reason why we couldn't accomplish this.
Okay.
They're trying to fix XGov to make it better. And so this is my kind of proposal at how we could make it better, and it's kind of a radical approach because it kind of involves throwing out what has already been done for XGov. But in my opinion, it's not anything very substantial. I'm not trying to shit on the people that created XGov, but I think it's confusing. I think it's slow, and I don't think it's efficiently allocating money, which is the whole point. So yeah, I just think it could be improved. And
I agree with you. Nobody said pulling teeth was fun, but it's not very effective when you're trying to chew. And I kind of feel like that's been the XGov process. It's been slow and painful. And yes, the people doing the work, I can see the amount of work. I don't know if that's the right thing to do if you're trying to chew better, for that really bad analogy that I came up with.
No, I get what you're saying. I think they started with a kind of a not very great model, and then they're trying to like just like tweak the model to make it better. Whereas like you could just kind of start with a clean slate and just, my whole proposal is based off of Optimism's retroactive public goods funding.
Yeah.
Optimism is an L2. And how do you distinguish yourself as an L2? You do funding really well, or you focus on one of these things. And I feel like Optimism has done a really fantastic job with governance, and it's kind of like their strong suit. And in my opinion, it's worked better than any other funding mechanism I've ever seen. So it just makes sense to me to cherry pick the best mechanism that we've seen, if it's agreed that it's good, and just use it, and that's what RPGF Impact DAO is completely based off. It is not a novel idea that I came up with. It's just something I stole from Optimism. And like, that's what we should do. We should just take the best shit and use it, instead of trying to like create XGov, which in my opinion is just like, you're trying to give everybody a say, but everybody shouldn't have a say in funding. Like, I firmly believe that, like, this really needs to be like experts deciding, and like we call them expert governors.
I was
like,
gonna say,
there's no qualification to be an expert, right? It's just like,
I mean, you have to have some patience.
Governance rewards.
I think is the main patience.
Speaking a little bit on the comparisons to Optimism, do you think that there are some differences in trying to do a program like this on a layer 1 versus a layer 2, or do you think, generally speaking, by and large, as long as you can develop an ecosystem, it doesn't really matter what the ecosystem is for? Just doing something is better than doing what we're doing.
I think like we're kind of solving the exact same issue, which is public funding in a decentralized, network. And so I don't think there's much difference in that aspect. The aspect that, or the pushback that I received mainly compared to Optimism is, oh, well, they can just copy paste a bunch of shit and put it on Optimism, and it's a lot lower of a hurdle than, writing, brand new smart contracts on Algorand. You have no references, there's no copy and pasting. It's much more difficult. And I don't know if that really makes the funding like any different. It's like we're still rewarding impact, and we're trying to make impact equal to profit. And so the goals are the same, between Optimism and how I see this going on Algorand. Optimism has one big benefit on Algorand, and that is ETH aligned. Right. And that's like, so when they build their community, they don't need to convince anybody to leave Ethereum. Right. Like, and I saw this mentioned too. It's like, oh, L2s don't have communities. They're all just ETH communities. And it's like, that's kind of true and kind of not. Like, Optimism definitely has a community, and so it's kind of impressive that they've been able to build a community and separate themselves from Ethereum. As an L2, it's kind of like what Voy is doing with Algorand. It's like they're trying to like separate themselves, but not completely, and kind of like build their own vibe. Go ahead, D13.
Another difference with Optimism, which is definitely helped by the ETH alignment, is the momentum. So for them, it's probably easier to be mainly retroactive funding compared to here, and the ETH alignment plays into that as well. So if someone is already deployed to ETH mainnet or base, then deploying and adding value to Optimism is relatively low cost. So having the retroactive model there really works, and also they have significantly more momentum than Algorand does right now, which is why I'm a little bit skeptical about cutting out the proactive funding needed to actually bootstrap significant proposals. That said, the retroactive grant, in our current state of affairs, the retroactive grants are basically necessary to keep existing protocols alive, because pretty much everything needs additional revenue at this point, because everything is volume dependent.
Right.
And that's not even touching some stuff that is public goods, right?
Yeah.
Wallets, not really profitable. Explorers, not really profitable. There's maybe a handful of explorers that can be sustained by selling API access or custom data. And there's a common sentiment to like Rand Labs shutting down. That is, oh, you didn't have a viable business. Sorry, Algo Explorer specifically, not Rand Labs generally. But for Algo Explorer specifically, there was a sentiment on Twitter which is, oh, you didn't have a viable business model, then get the fuck out. Like,
Right.
no explorer is going to be self-sustaining. Some stuff is public goods, and it improves the entirety of the chain by existing. And so retroactive grants is basically one of the few avenues to keep things like wallets or explorers alive, aside from the goodwill of the developer who's paying out of pocket.
Well, and I think
Go ahead, Ted.
The big thing too that like you mentioned with that, where Algorand's ability to need to proactively provide funds versus Ethereum's, right? Like you're talking about ETH alignment. Well, it's not just from a community perspective; it's from a financial perspective, right? I feel like the prospect of getting tens or hundreds of millions of dollars bridged over to you when there's already a tremendous amount from a layer 1 to a layer 2 is a way lower hurdle than trying to get people to bridge hundreds of millions of dollars either in fiat or even tens of or whatever from one layer 1 to another layer 1, especially considering for the longest time, at least with Algorand, there wasn't really even a way to do that. I mean, sure, we've got some bridges now, don't get me wrong, but we were trying to go and say, oh, well, we'll promise all this money will come in, but just don't tell us how, or we were not going to tell you how. And I feel like
you might not have a way to off ramp it though.
Yeah. And well, I mean, and to some extent, you look at this is kind of the state of the ecosystem in the first place, looking at freaking Para right now, where you can't, you download Para. Let's say, you've there's been a bunch of mints recently, and let's say you need an extra 20 for your minimum balance or something like that. Oh, no problem. On any other wallet, there's it might not be the best deal, but you can natively just go and buy some more, top off your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
In Para, you can't do that.
Oh, I thought you could.
Maybe not in the US. I think they have added it.
And
okay.
that where I will defer to that. And for what it's worth, you used to be able to do it on Paro using
MoonPay.
Yes,
MoonPay.
Thank you.
That's what I was thinking of. Yep.
And that is, and I will go on Paro right now to confirm to make sure I'm not an idiot.
Oh, you're probably right.
But
I think you're right.
There's a buy and sell. Oh, you can buy Algo with Meld, so that is new.
Go ahead, D13. Sorry.
Then it says, unfortunately, to your legal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
in the US. Sorry, bud.
I was going to say that that the cost to develop and maintain some of the stuff is often not worth the juice squeezed. So yes, like if in a bull market and with a ton of volume, that's absolutely something they should be focusing on. When in our current state, it doesn't really surprise me that they didn't prioritize putting that together immediately as a first thing, even though they actually did do that apparently.
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch back on bridging to Algorand. It's this is all a marketing social thing. It is not a technological hurdle in my mind. It is trivially easy through Portal Bridge to move money from any chain to Algorand almost. So
sure,
we could market ourselves
right.
Let's just the one of the day, right, is Blast. Blast launched today, and that's an Ethereum L2. I don't know really much about it. It was just a multi-sig when they announced that it was going to launch. And it was able to generate so much hype through just saying that they have native yield, right? So essentially everything that is deposited into Blast is wrapped ETH, and it's staked ETH. So you deposit your wrapped staked ETH or, whatever ETH, your restaked staked ETH into this. And, they got $2 billion of ETH in deposits, right? That is 100x or something RTVL.
Yeah.
And all they did was say, we are offering native yield for your ETH. So that is strictly a marketing thing. Like, it's like, like there's
Native
protocol.
yield, just to like what I know it's not really the roundtable topic, but just in case anybody's listening, is like, what is native yield? It's like, it's when you stake maybe ETH, but you get algo or whatever that layer's token is, right?
So
Am I right there?
native yield just means that you're earning yields constantly on whatever you're holding. So like
like
it's kind of like a made up concept. It's kind of like a made up concept, honestly.
Well, we used to have that though. You got money for holding, right?
Yeah, we just got
passive.
Yeah, we got rewards constantly accruing to our accounts, and then like when you made a transaction, then you got it like deposited or something like that. I can't remember how it worked exactly. Yeah, that was great. I love that. Just
it got people to algo.
Yeah,
got a lot of
so
people.
This is the play that Blast is doing, right? They say, oh, just bridge your ETH to Blast, and then we'll you'll get yield on that ETH the entire time you're holding it on Blast. But there's no reason why that protocol could not be on Algorand. You know what I mean? It's like you deposit your ETH here, and then you have full access to it, and will tell you that your ETH balance is going up because it's staked ETH. And like they could just give some little Ponzi token on top of it to make the APY higher. So it's like, okay, you get 3% for just staking your ETH, and then let's create a token and we'll give it to these ETH stakers, at like 10% a year or something.
You'll earn some yield.
Now all of a sudden, this protocol has 13% yield on ETH, right? But it's on algo, and like, there's no reason why we couldn't do it. It's just like, it just takes somebody wanting to do it and being confident that Algorand is the place to do it.
There's at least the wallet friction to overcome, though. There's like Janus was interesting. One of the projects in Buildable offered a way to basically wrap your ETH account and use it on Algorand. But for something to be usable by Ethereum folks without having to onboard onto a new ecosystem all the way from starting new wallet, new accounts, and everything, that would make a massive difference, I think.
Definitely. Yeah.
Seeing MetaMask Snap wallet evolve further would also be a step towards this direction, but also being able to use your ETH keys,
Totally.
Use that encryption.
Bridging is another roundtable topic. We're such degens. You can't keep us in one place. But I was asking John Fisherman D13 if he saw a path for implementation, right? Like a path to victory as far as a winning proposal, that we can actually get support on. Same question for you. Do you see a path for us? And if so, what might it look like? I know, Fisherman, you didn't quite get to elaborate on what you think that path might look like, but I'd love to hear from both of you kind of how you think we might be able to make this happen. I did pin the Medium post as well for anybody who wants to check it out.
The retroactive funding in general is the question?
Right. Like, do you see a path to that type of change as far as grant implementation here on Algorand? Do you think there's a path to this? Or you think we're going to wait forever and then they're going to do XGov anyways?
We don't really have enough information to say at this point. It will largely depend on the foundation first, but also on community pressure second. So they, first of all, I think that in the last year plus that they've been working on the Gambit roadmap, because don't think that this thing was pulled together over Christmas, right? This has been going on for quite some time. So this, to me, this tells me that they are grounded in reality. They are listening to what we're saying and what we have been complaining about. They might not action everything, and they might not action everything immediately or as soon as it's needed. But I do see a willingness to change and to take feedback on board. And maybe they have to evolve it for some regulatory reasons or something. So it will largely depend on the foundation because they hold the purse that's going to fund this. But it also depends on every single person listening to me speaking right now. So if you make your desire for something like this for a better XGov, whether it be fully retroactive or just more, I don't know, different, if you keep asking for it, then that's going to keep the subject alive and make it a larger ask by the community to the foundation.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something very important, is that like why I asked for 600 million algo in that proposal to be locked up for this idea is because I am truly scared that if we do not get this locked up, then it will be spent on something else. And
Yeah.
it's completely unacceptable, in my opinion, that like the community does not have a massive allocation like of algo coming to it. You know, it's like this algo that they have left is not destined for us, right? It's like some of it might come to us through like TDR rewards or through governance or through NFT rewards or like whatever programs that they can dream up. But it is not specifically intended for builders making an impact. And like that's like kind of blows my mind. And especially when you look at Optimism and their allocation for their community is fucking massive. You know what I mean? So like they're airdropping 560 million OP in the future. They've already airdropped 40 million. And that is not even accounting for their RPGF, right? Like their impact out. So yeah, it's just that is one thing that I think is very important is we need to actually get them to lock this up. And yeah, going back on how we actually get this done is a big question. It's you know, I wrote this general proposal to kind of get like a little feedback from people, and the feedback that I have received has been pretty positive. There's a lot of people who would like a more iterative approach to XGov and not just throw it out. And I hear that feedback, and I've been trying to like figure out a way that we could mesh them together. But fundamentally, XGov just does not work the way that we need it to work. Like, so the first thing is the permissionless, like anybody can be in XGov. Well, if that is the case, then, you know, people are going to be able to, you know, make bad decisions essentially. And obviously this is not solely true. If you like handpick a group of people, like they could still make bad decisions. But if you handpick like, you know, people that you already have a, you know, knowledge of how they act and, you know, kind of the way they think, then you could probably create a group of like 100 people who, you know, in aggregate have a much better sense of the ecosystem than, you know, the 3,000, 4,000 people that join XGov. That's like, you know, that's kind of my reasoning that we need to completely kind of scrap XGov, is because like if you just allow everybody to participate in this and people view it as like a source of yield or something, then you're going to attract like just the wrong group of people that don't really care about like the decisions being made. They just care for some other reason. You know, you need to know that these people have their heart like in the right place and are making decisions for like the betterment of the entire ecosystem, not just, you know, to get yield or something.
Something I'd like to add is that it's actually easier for Optimism to be throwing that much money into their community, since their circulating supply right now, according to CoinMarketCap, is like 23%. So the flip side to saying we only have like 20% dilution left for over the course of 6 years, as we are at 80% circulating supply, is that there's less to throw around in investments in community and so on. But that point only makes it more necessary to get some kind of commitment to at least earmark that budget for maybe on a retroactive impact DAO or something of the sort.
Yeah, locking it seems like a logical kind of first step. like commitment to, like you said, earmarking maybe. Okay, so there's a Medium post. You're also on the forum, right, Fisherman? Okay,
Yeah, so
so
there's
is
like
that
three
kind of the
different
best way?
places. Sorry, yeah, there's so many different places that these discussions are going on. So there's the Algonauts Discord general chat, which a lot of
Okay.
good discussion goes down in, and then there's the Algorand Discord, which they have like 3 channels for governance, XGov, all kinds of stuff. I don't keep up with that Discord at all. And then there's the forum, the Algorand forum, which has been pretty good. There's been like a lot of good discussion on there. So I'd say just follow the forums. I will probably be making another post pretty soon with like the ideas and the feedback that I've received. Cause like, I'm not some like, very smart person alone, but like with everybody's help, I can be a lot better, so I truly do take all the feedback and like, even when people are getting really nasty and like just like making personal attacks at me and stuff, it's like, okay, like, is there any actual valuable information in this post, or is it just completely shitting on me? And like, if there is, like, I actually take it to heart, like that, like any feedback. So if you have ideas, like I want to hear them, and the forum, probably the best place to do that.
Unfortunately, I have to run. John D13 IRL, I really appreciate all of your
Thanks,
guys'
Teddy.
feedback and opportunity for a conversation in the first place. John, I really also sincerely appreciate just the amount of time, energy, and effort you're putting into it, despite the emotional responses that you may get. But yeah, all right.
Love you, Ted.
Thanks,
Love you.
Teddy. We
Take care.
appreciate you. Got him out of there. Yeah, I mean, so I don't want to, we could talk all day about this, and then we'd still be talking sometime next week. But I would like to, okay, so there's a Medium, and then there's the forum, and then obviously there's tweets about it that you can check out. You just soak it all up in one way or another, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has an idea, don't be, hesitant to share it. Like, that's one thing. The one word of advice that I'll leave for everybody is just like share your opinions, because you never know like what opinion is actually going to be super valuable to someone else. So like Kappa, for instance, giving me the idea about some proactive crowdfunding DAO. It was just like a Discord comment that he just left, and
But
it's
it makes sense.
it's
I
brilliant.
like it.
Like, I love it too. And so, these ideas are like so valuable. Please share them wherever I'll see it.
Well, and somebody said in the comments, I think it was Lobo, that like maybe a 3-tier where like we keep the XGov as like a section, and then we try this pilot that the community is really behind, and then maybe they do a proactive DAO on that third, like a 3-prong approach or something. I feel like any movement would be good movement. I'm big on having your own control. Obviously, like we all have self-custody wallets. Governance just hasn't given me that warm thing, like tingly feeling where I get excited about it. I've just gotten frustrated over the years. And so I'm eager to say, like, let's plug something else in. Let's try something that on its surface makes sense and is easy to understand, regardless of what it is, right? And so that's why I'm really excited about it. Hopefully very soon we'll have a chance to roundtable with some AF XGov experts. XGov, AF, you know what I mean. Tentatively, Loden will be setting that up. So thank you to Loden for getting the crew together. And I'll keep everybody updated on when that is. Fisherman, last chance to just quick tell us like how we can support what you're doing, and then we'll jump to D13.
Just, like I said, just leave feedback. Honestly, like just reading the Medium post that I put out most recently, and just leaving like, just taking the time to read it would be great. And then like any feedback at all is greatly appreciated, because it helps me like understand what the community believes. Like, I have a pretty good understanding of the community, but I don't know everybody's personal opinions. So definitely like just give me feedback. That's all I want. And, on Twitter, forums, Discord, wherever is good.
Appreciate it. D13? Oh, there he is.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. Go ahead.
Still here. Right. Yeah, nothing else to add here. I gave some feedback to Fisherman when he initially created this. Another aspect that we haven't spoken about very much, and I'd like to briefly say a few words, is about the accountability here. Because on one hand, and some criticism of this has been about the centralization of like who gets to be part of the Impact DAO. But I think the initial list that Fisherman put together had a good sample of the kind of people that you might want to put on there, and it also includes voting people out of it. And
I did
another
like
aspect
that.
that I haven't seen discussed much is that there is a one-to-one mapping between the algo given out and the votes that you cast. So the budget is divided by 115 or however many people there are, and there's going to be a minimum number of people that need to support a proposal or project. Sorry, not proposal, a project. But then every single vote that you put towards there manifests on the other side as an algo given to them. So that, I think, is a more direct like cause and effect than mixing it all up together into XGov votes out of like 1 trillion, and I supported, I don't know, Kim and her and that. Yeah, I think it would be a lot more transparent and accountable than anonymous XGov addresses.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like the transparency. I like stuff to like make sense at face value. Like I'm not scared to dig in more to it, but I don't want to be completely lost at a glance. And that's where I'm at. And I think that part of this discussion, there definitely is a place for video content. People are busy. Video, audio content is huge. So I appreciate you guys for helping us kind of go over some of the discussions so far. That's taking place kind of all over the place in XGov. D13, I hear you're going to come back and show me something cool soon, right?
Yep. Soon.
I dig it. And Fisherman, I'm going to have you back. You got to come on Algo Hour for our season 3. We're, doing stuff, don't you know? And it's always great to have you. But we'll definitely schedule another roundtable. And I'd like to help give that a platform, if that makes sense. I want to help lift it in the way that I can, which is doing this kind of stuff. So I appreciate you guys big time. If you're catching us after the fact in a recording, definitely leave some comments in the YouTube. I'll pass them along if you'd like, but I appreciate everyone big time. And I can't wait to see what we can do to really like push some meaningful change forward. I think that that's what everybody really wants to see is like meaningful. We all want to be bullish on it, right?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you giving me like the platform just to talk about this stuff. And I honestly think governance topics are best discussed like in long form, like so in an hour and 20-minute discussion. Like these aren't things that you can just like tweet in 180 characters or 280 or whatever. Yeah, so these discussions really are best done long form. And like if you can give me feedback, please make it long form or like put some serious thought into it. Like do not like a one-line reply doesn't help me that much. You know what I mean? It kind of gives me a little understanding, but like these things are very complicated, and like just a voting system, like just to talk about a voting mechanism or system, like could be 5 paragraphs, because of how these things work. So yeah, the more detailed, the better. Feel free to roast me or, villainize me or whatever. But yeah, just make it long form and I'll be happy. And thank you so much, IRL, for honestly the talk and just letting us come up and rant.
Oh, I love you both big time. And I'm sorry we missed Loaf. He had some problems connecting without Wi-Fi. So we'll catch him next time. But thank you so much.
Thank you. And
Much
thanks
love.
to
Thank you
D13.
very much. Ditto.